Hello and welcome. In this video we're going to be looking at deriving the quadratic formula. Now the quadratic formula is probably something you've been using in the past, but in this video we're going to work out exactly where it comes from. So what is the quadratic formula? Well, the quadratic formula is a formula that helps you to solve a quadratic equation, and a quadratic equation is an equation that's written in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Now this here is the quadratic formula. X is equal to minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. And what we're going to be looking at is where this formula comes from. So how do you get from there to there? And that's what we're going to be looking at in this video. In order to understand the proof completely, you need to understand how completing the square works. So if you don't know how that works, make sure you do that first. And if you already know how to complete the square, grab a pen and some paper and let's derive the quadratic formula. So we're going to figure out how to go from this equation on the left to this equation on the right. So I'm going to start off by writing down ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take out a common factor of a. So we have a, and then I'm going to put a square bracket, and inside that square bracket I need to put x squared. Let me use a different colour. So x squared, and if we take out a factor of a from here, we are left with b divided by a x, and then the c I'm going to keep outside, so we'll close the square bracket here, put the plus c equals 0. So if I multiply this out, multiply out the square bracket, this will give me the top line, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Now what we have in blue inside the square bracket, we're going to complete the square for that. So I'm going to copy out everything outside of the square bracket first. Which is that. And we're going to complete the square for what we have in blue. So that's going to be open bracket, normal bracket, x, we have a plus, and then it's half of b divided by a. Half of b divided by a is b divided by 2a. We're going to close the bracket, I'm going to square, and with completing the square we need to minus the b over 2a squared. And we close the square bracket, plus c equals 0. So what we've done there is we've completed the square. I'm just going to multiply out this bracket. So x plus b over 2a squared minus, and if we multiply this out, this becomes b squared divided by 2a squared, which is 4a squared. And all of this is still inside this square bracket. And outside that bracket we have an a, and then we're going to add c to it, and that equals 0. Now we're going to get rid of this square bracket. So we're going to multiply a by what's inside the square bracket. That's going to leave us with a multiplied by x plus b divided by 2a all squared minus a times b squared over 4a squared. A times b squared over 4a squared. Now this a will cancel with one of these a's, leaving us with b squared over 4a, and then we have a plus c equals 0. Now we're going to simplify this by finding a common denominator for b squared over 4a and plus c. So I'll copy out the first part of the line. Now the common denominator of 4a and c on its own is basically c divided by 1. So a common denominator of them could be 4a. So if I rewrite both of them over 4a, b squared over 4a will remain as b squared over 4a. And in order to make this into 4a, I multiply the 1 by 4a, so I multiply the c by 4a, giving us 4ac. Now we're at a position where we can begin to solve this because we're trying to find out what x equals. So we eventually want to get x on its own. So the first thing I need to get rid of is these two fractions. So if I take these fractions to the right, I'm left with a times x plus b divided by 2a squared. And this was a minus b squared plus 4ac. So when I take it over to the right, it becomes a plus b squared over 4a. And then this is a 4ac over 4a. This is positive right now, but when you take it over, it'll become a negative. So it'll become minus 4ac over 4a. And I can rewrite this as b squared minus 4ac divided by 4a. And that might start to look familiar to you now. So I'm just going to copy out this last line at the top here. So a bracket x plus b divided by 2a all squared equals b squared minus 4ac divided by 4a. Now we're going to continue on solving this. So I want to get x on its own. The next thing I need to get rid of is this a. So it's a multiplied by that. So I'm going to divide everything by a. Dividing the left side by a will leave me with the bracket squared. Dividing this by a will give me the same thing on the top, but on the bottom will give me a 4a squared. So back to here, we're trying to get x on its own. The next thing I need to get rid of is the squared. And the way you get rid of a squared is you square root both sides. So if I square root the left hand side, I get x plus b divided by 2a. And if I square root the right hand side, I get b squared minus 4ac divided by 4a squared. Now when you square root something, you get two answers. You get a positive answer and a negative answer. So I'm going to put plus or minus the square root of that. Now this is the same as saying the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by the square root of 4a squared. And we need a plus or minus there. So if I copy out the left hand side again, x plus b divided by 2a. The top, we can't really do anything to that, so I'm just going to leave it as plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. The bottom of the fraction says the square root of 4a squared. Well, 4 is a square number, a squared is a square number, so if we square root 4a squared, we get 2a. So now it's starting to look a little bit more like this. Now in order to get x on its own, I need to get rid of this b divided by 2a. So I'm going to minus b over 2a from both sides. So that will leave me with x equals minus b divided by 2a plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now since we have a common denominator of 2a, I can write this as one big fraction with a common denominator of 2a, and that would become minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. And that there is the quadratic formula that we were trying to prove. So we've successfully gone from ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0 all the way to the quadratic formula. Thank you for watching. I hope you found that video useful. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button. And if you haven't already done so, subscribe for more videos like this. See you next time.